Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Saturday, February 14th, 2026. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
And happy Valentine's Day to you as well. It feels like a strange day to be recording, doesn't it? All this pressure to talk about romance and connection.
Which is exactly why I think our topic today is perfect in a really twisted way.
Oh, how so?
Because we're talking about a relationship that almost everyone of a certain age has had.
Yeah.
It was a relationship that, it started out exciting and new.
Okay.
Then it got a little bit controlling. Then it became incredibly frustrating. And eventually it ended with us trying to break up while they just begged us to stay.
And yet for some people, that relationship lasted for, what, over 30 years?
We are, of course, talking about America Online, AOL.
Yeah.
The three letters that basically were the internet for an entire generation. And I know what you're thinking. Why are we talking about AOL in 2026? Isn't that just a dinosaur?
You would absolutely think so. But this particular dinosaur has been making a lot of noise recently.
It really has.
Just a few months ago, in October of 2025, AOL was acquired, yet again. This time by an Italian tech conglomerate called Bending Spoons for roughly $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion.
Right.
That's a staggering amount of money for a brand most people associate with, well, with the screech of a 56K modem.
Exactly.
And speaking of that screech, we also have to pour one out for a specific era because as of September 30, 2025, so just late last year, AOL officially, finally, discontinued its dial-up service.
It is officially the end of the line. No more handshakes, no more static, no more connecting at 2400 baud. It's over.
So here's our mission today. We have a massive stack of source material, corporate history, merger documents, the controversy files, all of it. We're going to unpack how a company that started, and this blew my mind, as a video game service for the Atari 2600.
Yeah, that part's wild.
Became the internet on training wheels for millions, executed the most disastrous merger in American history, and then somehow survived as this, zombie media company for another 2 decades.
It is a wild, wild ride. And I think the reason this deep dive is so important right now is that we tend to remember AOL as a joke,
Totally.
We remember the funny CDs and the "You've Got Mail" voice. But if you actually look at the DNA of this company, it is the blueprint for everything we use today.
What do you mean?
It was the walled garden before the Apple App Store. It was social media before Facebook. It was, frankly, surveillance capitalism before Google even had an algorithm.
Okay, let's unpack that, because you just dropped a bomb there that I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of gloss over. You said it started as a video game service.
That's right. If you think the origin of AOL is Steve Case in a garage somewhere wanting to send an email, you are completely wrong.
Right.
The origin story takes us all the way back to 1983, and we're talking about a company called Control Video Corporation, or CVC.
1983, I mean, that's... The Macintosh computer hasn't even launched yet. The internet as we know it is basically just a military and academic project.
Exactly. And the man behind this wasn't Steve Case. It was a guy named William von Meister. And he was a character, a sort of eccentric entrepreneur who had previously tried to launch a service to deliver music via cable TV.
So like Spotify before Spotify.
Basically, yeah. But the music industry killed it. So he pivoted. He pivoted to video games.
And the product was called GameLine.
GameLine. And honestly, the technology for its time is fascinating. You have to picture this. You have an Atari 2600 console at home. You buy this massive, chunky modem cartridge from CVC for about $50.
The modem cartridge.
Yeah, you plug it into your Atari, and then you plug a phone line directly into the cartridge.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that in 1983, people were downloading games over a phone line? How did that even work physically? The Atari didn't have a hard drive. It had no storage.
That's the genius of it. The cartridge itself had a specialized chipsum RAM that could hold the game data temporarily.
Oh.
You'd dial up, you'd pay $1, literally $1 per play, and the code for the game would be pushed down the phone line into that cartridge's memory. You could play for as long as you wanted.
As long as you didn't turn it off.
Provided you did not turn off the console. The second you did, poof, the game was gone.
So it was basically a rental. Yeah. Or like having an arcade cabinet in your living room that only played one game at a time.
Precisely. And it even tracked high scores. If you were really good, your score got sent back to their central server, and you could see where you ranked regionally. It was online gaming a decade before Doom.
That sounds absolutely incredible. So why? Why did it fail? Why don't we all have GameLine modules in our attics?
Terrible, terrible timing. CVC launched GameLine right into the teeth of the great video game crash of 1983.
Oh, right. the ET disaster.
Yeah, the market was just flooded with awful games. Consumers stopped buying consoles. Retailers were panicked. And the whole industry just imploded. CVC was dragged right down with it. They were near bankruptcy.
And this is where the cast of characters we actually know starts to assemble.
Yes. This is where Steve Case comes in. He was brought in as a marketing consultant. He was young. He'd worked at Pizza Hut, essentially inventing toppings.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that was his claim to fame. He was looking for the next big thing. And they also brought in a guy named Jim Kimsey as a manufacturing consultant.
So you've got the boring operations guy and the visionary marketing guy.
It's the classic startup duo. And when CVC collapsed, von Meister left in early 1985. But Kimsey and Case, they look at the core technology, this ability to connect a home device to a central server, and they said, there is something here. It's not for Atari games.
So they pivot.
They pivoted hard to computers.
Yeah.
They founded a new company called Quantum Computer Services in May 1985, and this is really important. They didn't try to build a service for every computer out there. They struck a deal with Commodore.
For the Commodore 64.
The single best-selling computer model of all time, an enormous built-in audience. And Quantum launched a service called Q-Link specifically for the Commodore 64 and 128.
And because they were building for just one specific machine, they could do something the other online services couldn't.
Exactly, which was graphics. See, back then, if you used a service like CompuServe or The Source, you were connecting to a mainframe.
Yep.
Your computer at home was just a dumb terminal. All you saw was text.
Green text on a black screen.
Right.
Like in the movie War Games. Very intimidating.
Terrifying for a normal person. But Q-Link used the processing power of the Commodore itself. It had a graphical user interface. You used a joystick or a mouse. You clicked on little icons. It used this proprietary protocol to send tokens back and forth instead of just raw text. It felt like using software and not like hacking into the Pentagon.
So from day one, their whole DNA was user experience. They weren't trying to be the most powerful or have the most features. They were trying to be the friendliest.
100%. Steve Case's vision was explicitly to be the online service for people who don't know how to use computers. He wanted to make it an appliance, like a toaster. You plug it in and it just works.
Which brings us to 1989. They rebrand Quantum Computer Services to something a little more patriotic.
A little more mainstream.
Yeah.
America Online. And that name change really signaled a shift in their strategy. They weren't just for Commodore nerds anymore. They were going after the mass market. They wanted everyone.
And to get everyone,
Yeah.
you have to invent a whole new way of marketing.
Oh, yes.
I know exactly where this is going. We have to talk about the carpet bombing.
The carpet bombing is the only way to describe it.
If you were alive in the 90s, you could not escape them. You opened a magazine, AOL disc. You bought a box of cereal. There was an AOL disc in the bag. You went to the movie theater. They handed you an AOL disc with your popcorn.
It was inescapable. Their chief marketing officer at the time, Yun Brandt, had this philosophy that the software should be a non-issue. She didn't want you to have to go to a store and make a conscious decision to buy AOL. She wanted to remove every single bit of friction. If you even thought about going online, oh look, there's a disc on your coffee table, there's another one in your mailbox.
The stats on this are just bananas. I was reading in the source material that at one point, something like 50%, half of all CDs produced worldwide, had an AOL logo on them.
Stop and think about the scale of that. Not 50% of software CDs, 50% of all CDs. That includes music albums, everything. Half of the global production capacity for compact discs was occupied by Steve Case's marketing department.
But was it worth it? I mean, that has to be insanely expensive. They were basically printing money, just throwing it out of helicopters.
It was incredibly expensive, but the economics work. This is the classic customer acquisition cost, or CAC, versus lifetime value, or LTV.
Okay, break that down.
Let's say it costs them $1 to produce and mail a disc. If they send out 100 discs, that's $100 spent. If only one single person signs up from that batch, their acquisition cost for that customer is $100.
Which sounds ridiculously high.
It sounds high until you realize that user is paying, say, $20 a month. In just 5 months, they've paid back the acquisition cost. And people stayed on AOL for years. The lifetime value of a single subscriber was thousands of dollars. So spending $100 or even $300 to get a customer was a complete no-brainer.
It was just a numbers game. A volume business.
A ruthless numbers game. And it did create this massive environmental backlash. There was a campaign called No More AOL CDs, where IT workers collected over 400,000 of these discs.
And I remember that. They built a literal throne out of them.
They did. They were trying to shame the company for all the plastic waste. But you know what? The strategy worked. It absolutely worked.
By the mid-90s, they had just crushed the competition. CompuServe, Prodigy, Genie, they were all left in the dust.
Completely. They hit 3 million users by 1995, and once those users were in, they were inside the walled garden.
I love that term. Can you explain the walled garden concept for our younger listeners? Because the internet today feels so permeable. You just jump from Google to Reddit to Wikipedia without even thinking.
Right. So the walled garden meant that AOL curated everything for you. When you logged into AOL in, say, 1994, you weren't really on the World Wide Web. Not at first.
You were on AOL's private internet.
Exactly. Their intranet. They had licensed content. They had the New York Times on AOL. They had the Encyclopedia Britannica on AOL. They had games, weather, sports, chat rooms.
It's like an all-inclusive resort.
Yeah.
You check in, and you don't really need to leave the property because the buffet is there, the pool is there, the entertainment is all right there.
It's the perfect analogy. And for a non-technical user, the open internet outside those walls was a scary, confusing wilderness. You had to know about HTTP protocols. You had to type in IP addresses sometimes. It was messy. AOL made it safe. It was Disney World.
But the people who already lived in the wilderness, the hardcore techies, the university students, they didn't much like the Disney World tourists, did they?
They hated them. Oh, they despised them. And this brings us to one of my favorite sociological events in internet history, the Eternal September.
The Eternal September. It sounds like a horror movie title.
For the old school internet users, it kind of was. So here's the context. Before 1993, if you wanted to talk to people online, you used something called Usenet.
Which was kind of like a prehistoric Reddit.
A very good way of putting it. It was a system of discussion boards, very text-based and decentralized. And the people on Usenet were mostly university students, professors, and researchers, people who had access to university mainframes.
Right.
And every year in September, a new crop of college freshmen would arrive, get their first university email accounts, and flood Usenet. They would post annoying questions, they wouldn't read the FAQs, they'd break all the unspoken rules of etiquette.
They were the noobs?
They were the noobs. But usually, by October or November, the freshmen would either learn the rules or get bored and leave. So the September chaos would end, and order would be restored for another year.
Until 1993.
Until September 1993. That is the month that AOL built a gateway that allowed its millions of users to access Usenet for the first time.
Oh, no.
Suddenly, the floodgates didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges. It wasn't just a few thousand freshmen anymore, it was millions of normal Americans.
Yep.
Housewives, plumbers, teenagers, grandparents.
And they had no idea what the rules were.
They had no idea. They were typing in all caps. They were asking, how do I download pictures in, advanced philosophy discussion groups? It was total chaos. And because AOL kept sending out those CDs, the flood of new people never stopped. It didn't end in October. It was September. Forever.
Hence the Eternal September. That's incredible. And I read about the hidden news group they created. That's hilarious.
Yes. The Usenet veterans created a news group called alt.aolsucks. And the funniest part is that AOL actually listed it in their own directory.
They did not.
They did, but they changed the description. On Usenet, the official description was a gathering place for those who despise the great Satan of the internet. But inside AOL, the description was just flames and complaints about America online.
You have to give them credit for allowing it at all, but all this growth wasn't just causing cultural problems. It was about to cause a massive, massive infrastructure meltdown. We have to talk about the pricing shift of 1996.
This was the moment that nearly killed the company. This was their big gamble. Up until late 1996, AOL charged by the hour.
Oh, I remember that anxiety.
Right. You'd pay a monthly fee, which gave you, say, 5 hours, and then every single minute after that cost money. The meter was always running.
You'd log on, check your mail as fast as humanly possible, download everything, and then immediately disconnect to read it offline.
Exactly. It kept network traffic manageable because people were financially incentivized to log off. But the competition was getting fierce. Smaller, local ISPs started offering unlimited access for a flat fee. AOL was losing customers.
So Steve Case had to respond.
He had to. So in December 1996, he pulled the trigger, $19.95 a month, unlimited use.
And the dam broke.
It was catastrophic, just a complete and utter disaster. Suddenly, nobody logged off. Why would you? You weren't paying by the minute anymore. People would log on in the morning and just leave the connection open all day long.
And AOL's modems physically could not handle it.
Not even close. You have to understand the math. They had built their entire network infrastructure, assuming the average user would be online for maybe 20 minutes a day. Suddenly, the average user was online for 3 hours a day.
The busy signal became the soundtrack of America in 1997. I remember coming home from school, trying to dial in, and just hearing that beep, beep, beep over and over again. I'd set it to redial for 2 hours just to check my email.
It became a national crisis. I am not exaggerating. People were filing lawsuits. State attorneys general were opening investigations for false advertising. It got so bad, Steve Case had to go on television and film a commercial that was basically a hostage video.
I remember that ad. He looked so tired. He looked so stressed out.
He looked exhausted. He just looked straight into the camera and said, "We're working day and night to fix this." They had to pause all that marketing. They had to stop sending the CDs because they literally couldn't handle the customers they already had.
But here's the amazing thing. People stayed. Even with the constant busy signals, even with all the frustration, they didn't leave. Why?
Community.
The chat room.
The chat rooms. That was the killer app. People weren't on AOL for the news articles. They were there to talk to their friends or to talk to complete strangers in town square or to find romance in the romance connection.
It was the first mass market social network.
It absolutely was. But managing all those chat rooms,
Yeah.
that was a massive labor undertaking. And this is where we get into some really murky ethical waters that I think are fascinating.
Your community leader program.
Right. So AOL realized very quickly they couldn't possibly hire enough PED staff to moderate thousands and thousands of chat rooms. It would cost a fortune. So they tapped into their most passionate users. They created the Community Leader, or CL program.
And who are these people?
They were volunteers. They were power users who just loved AOL. And the company said, hey, if you agree to work for us, monitor these chat rooms, enforce the terms of service, help out the newbies, we'll give you a special badge and free AOL.
Wait, hold on. Their only compensation was saving $20 a month.
That was it. And we are talking about serious work. These people had scheduled shifts. They had to log their hours on time cards. They had to work a minimum of 4 hours a week, but many were working 20 or 30 hours. They signed non-disclosure agreements. They were managed by senior volunteers. It was a full-blown corporate hierarchy staffed almost entirely by unpaid labor.
That sounds completely illegal.
Well, a couple of former volunteers thought so. In 1999, they filed a massive class action lawsuit claiming violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Right.
They argued, look, if it looks like a job and it acts like a job, and you're telling me when I have to show up like a job, you have to pay me minimum wage.
How did that turn out for them?
It dragged on for over a decade. But eventually, in 2010, AOL settled. They paid out $15 million. It's a fascinating precursor to all the debates we have now about, say, Reddit moderators or Discord admins. AOL proved you could build $1 billion empire on the backs of volunteers, but eventually the bill comes due.
So we have the rise, the explosive growth, the community. Now we have to talk about the absolute peak, the Icarus moment where AOL flew way too close to the sun. The merger.
January 2001, the merger with Time Warner.
This wasn't just a business deal. This felt like a cultural event. I remember the magazine covers. The deal of the century.
It was the largest merger in United States history. At the time it was announced, the combined value was something like $360 billion. To put that in perspective, that's bigger than the GDP of many countries.
So what was the logic? Because looking back on it now, it seems completely insane to mash up an internet provider with a movie studio and a magazine publisher.
The logic was convergence. That was the big buzzword. The idea was simple. AOL has the distribution, they have the eyeballs, the tens of millions of subscribers. Time Warner has the content, Warner Bros. Movies, CNN, Time Magazine, HBO.
So pipes plus content equals world domination.
In theory. But there was a darker, kind of shrewder financial reality underneath all that. You have to look at the stock market at the time. This was the absolute peak of the dot-com bubble.
Right.
AOL's stock was incredibly historically high. But Steve Case and the other executives, they were smart. They knew the bubble couldn't last forever. They knew their stock was, well, let's call it monopoly money.
It was inflated by hype, not by actual profits.
Exactly. So they used their inflated, hype-driven stock to buy a company with real, tangible assets. Time Warner had cables in the ground, they had film libraries, they had printing presses, real stuff. It was a brilliant move by AOL to convert their paper wealth into real wealth right before the crash.
But then the crash happened.
Almost immediately. The deal closed in January 2001. By late 2001, the dot-com bubble had burst completely. The economy slowed down after 9/11. And the valuation of the combined company just plummeted. It went from $360 billion to like $120 billion. They lost over $200 billion in value in the blink of an eye.
And that must have caused some serious tension inside the building.
It was a civil war, an absolute culture clash. You had the old-school Time Warner suits, guys who did 3 martini lunches and flew on corporate jets and cared about prestige. And you had the AOL techies guys in T-shirts and khakis who cared about growth at all costs.
And the Time Warner side must have felt like they got scammed.
Totally. They looked at the AOL side and basically said, you conned us, you bought our historic company with fake money, and now you're dragging our stock price through the mud.
It got so bad that they eventually took the name off the building, right? The ultimate insult.
That was the final humiliation. In 2003, they dropped AOL from the parent company's name. They went back to just being Time Warner. It was like a divorce where one partner just burns all the photos.
But the problems weren't just financial or cultural. The technological ground was shifting right beneath their feet. And this is the part that I think really killed AOL as a utility: broadband.
This is the nail in the coffin. 100%. Remember, AOL's entire business model was being your ISP. You paid them to dial in and get online. But then cable companies and phone companies started offering DSL and cable internet.
Which was always on. And so much faster. And you didn't need a separate piece of software to connect.
Exactly. Once you had a cable modem from Comcast, you were already on the internet. You didn't need the AOL welcome screen. You didn't need the dialer. So why would you pay $20 a month for AOL when you're already paying $40 a month for broadband?
So AOL became redundant. An unnecessary middleman.
They became a website, just a website that people were paying a subscription fee to access purely out of habit. They faced this massive existential crisis. If we aren't the connection anymore, what are we?
And they tried to pivot. I remember this. They launched the Bring Your Own Access plan.
BYOA. In 2006, they finally admitted defeat. They basically said, okay, fine. We'll give you the email and the software for free. Just please keep visiting our website so we can show you advertisements. They had to switch from a subscription business to an advertising business.
And that leads us directly into the zombie era, or maybe you'd call it the media mogul era. Because after the Time Warner disaster, they spun off and became an independent company again in 2009. And they brought in a guy named Tim Armstrong.
Tim Armstrong is a key figure in this later stage. He came from Google. He understood the new internet. He knew they couldn't sell dial-up anymore. So his strategy was simple: content and ad tech.
Okay, let's talk about the content first. They went on a shopping spree that feels very confusing in hindsight.
It was the era of the content farm. Armstrong believed that if AOL owned enough websites, they could sell enough ads to survive. So they bought TechCrunch, the biggest tech blog, in 2010. They bought the Huffington Post in 2011 for $315 million.
Which was huge news at the time. Arianna Huffington basically became the queen of AOL for a while there.
She did. They also had Engadget, Autoblog, and MapQuest. Remember printing out directions from MapQuest?
Turn left in 0.4 miles.
Yeah.
Oh, I lived by MapQuest before smartphones.
But the most interesting and ambitious failure of that era was a project called Patch.
Oh, Patch. I remember seeing a Patch site for my specific neighborhood. It was supposed to be hyper-local news.
That was the dream. Tim Armstrong wanted a dedicated news site for every single town in America, thousands of them. He hired hundreds of young journalists right out of school, but the economics just didn't work.
You can't make enough money to pay a reporter's salary from ads on a news site for a town of 10,000 people.
Exactly. It just hemorrhaged money for years. But while the content side was struggling and getting all the headlines, they were quietly building something else in the basement, something boring but very, very lucrative: ad tech.
This is the part that explains why the company actually survived for so long. Tim Armstrong turned AOL into a machine for something called programmatic advertising. Okay, explain that for us. What is programmatic?
So, in the old days, if Ford wanted to buy an ad on the New York Times website, a Ford sales guy would call a New York Times sales guy and they'd sign a contract. Programmatic is automated. It's software talking to software.
Right.
Ford says, I want to target males aged 30-40 who live in the Midwest and like trucks. And the software automatically bids on ad slots across millions of different websites in milliseconds to find those people.
And AOL built the software that made that happen.
They bought a bunch of smaller companies, Adapt TV, Millennial Media, and they stitched them all together into this big platform they called One by AOL. They became the middleman, the plumbing. So even if you never visited AOL.com, AOL's code was probably loading the ads you saw on other sites.
That is actually genius.
Yeah.
They stopped trying to be the destination and they just started being the plumbing for the entire internet.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
we can't tell the story of this era without taking a pretty significant detour into the dark side. Because as AOL was struggling to keep customers, they got aggressive.
Unbelievably aggressive. We have to talk about the Vincent Ferrari call.
Oh boy. If you were on the internet in 2006, you heard this recording, it went viral before viral was really a thing.
So set the scene for us.
Yeah.
June 2006.
Vincent Ferrari is a 30-year-old guy. He calls AOL to cancel his account. It's actually his dad's account, but he has all the info. And just in case, he decides to record the call. And what happens is basically a hostage negotiation.
I have the transcript here. I just want to read a small bit of it because it is truly unbelievable. Ferrari says, I want to cancel the account. The rep, whose name is John, says, okay, well, I'm looking at your account here, and I'm seeing that you've been with us for a long time.
The standard opening.
Right. Ferrari says, I don't use it. I want to cancel. The rep then says, but why? What is wrong with the software? Ferrari, I don't need to explain myself. I just want to cancel. And then the rep says, well, I can't cancel the account until you tell me what the problem is so we can fix it.
And this goes on for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of him just saying, cancel the account, and the rep refusing. At one point, the rep literally says, I am not going to cancel the account until you explain why. It was pure, unadulterated hostility.
Ferrari posted it on his blog, and it just exploded. It was on CNBC, The Today Show, everywhere. It basically confirmed what everyone secretly suspected. AOL was the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
And it wasn't just a rogue employee. That's the really scary part. Soon after that call went viral, AOL's internal retention manual leaked. It showed that employees were financially incentivized to do this. They got bonuses for saving cancellations. If they just said, okay, your account is canceled, they took a hit on their paycheck. The entire system was designed to harass you.
They eventually had to settle with the state of New York for over $1 million, but the damage to the brand was just... it was done. It felt so desperate.
And then just 2 months later, in August of 2006, they had an even bigger and frankly more terrifying scandal. The search data leak.
This one actually scares me way more than the cancellation call.
It should. It's much worse. So AOL released a massive data set for academic research. It contained 20 million search queries from about 650,000 users over a 3-month period. Now, they thought they were being safe. They replaced the screen names with random numbers. So instead of Steve Case, it was user 4417749.
But a person's search history is like a fingerprint. It's incredibly personal and unique.
It is more than a fingerprint. It's a diary. It's a confession. Think about what you type into a search bar. You type medical symptoms you're embarrassed about. You type addresses to people's homes. You type your own name just to see what comes up.
And people immediately started digging through the data.
Of course. And the New York Times found user 4417749 based on her searches for landscapers in Lilburn, Georgia, numb fingers, and dog that urinates on everything. They tracked her down. It was a 62-year-old widow named Thelma Arnold. They knocked on her door, read her own search history, and she confirmed it was her.
That is horrifying. That shattered the entire illusion of anonymity online. I think that was the moment we all collectively realized, oh, they are watching everything.
It was the birth of modern privacy anxiety. AOL apologized profusely, the CTO resigned, but the cat was out of the bag. We're all Thelma Arnold now.
So despite all these PR nightmares, that boring ad tech business we talked about was actually valuable. Valuable enough that in 2015, a new giant entered the chat. Verizon.
Verizon bought AOL for $4.4 billion in 2015.
And let's be crystal clear, they weren't buying the dial-up business or the email account.
No, not at all. They were buying the ad tech stack. Verizon's logic was, we own the pipes, the cellular network, now we need the technology to serve ads on those pipes. They wanted to compete with Google and Facebook.
And then, just to make things more confusing, Verizon also bought Yahoo a couple of years later.
Yes. So suddenly, under the Verizon umbrella, you had the two fallen giants of the 90s web. AOL and Yahoo. and they merged them into a new division with the worst name imaginable. Oath!
Oath. Oh, God, I remember everyone making fun of that name. It sounded like a cult. Or a bad perfume.
It was terrible branding. But the strategy was at least semi-valid. Combine AOL's ad tech with Yahoo's massive user base, fantasy sports, finance, mail. They wanted to create a third pillar to stand against the Google and Facebook duopoly.
And did it work?
No, it failed miserably. The Google-Facebook advertising machine was just too strong. Verizon spent about $9 billion buying AOL and Yahoo, and in 2021, they threw in the towel. They sold 90% of the division to a private equity firm called Apollo Global Management.
For how much?
$5 billion. So they bought high for $9 billion and sold low for $5 billion. They lost billions of dollars on the experiment.
And that brings us to the now, or at least the very recent past. Apollo had it for a few years, stripped it down for parts, and then sold it again. In October 2025, Apollo sold AOL to Bending Spoons.
Bending Spoons. I love that name. It sounds like a magic trick from The Matrix.
Who are these guys? What do they do?
They're an Italian tech firm based in Milan, and their business model is fascinating and a little ruthless. They are professional aggregators. They buy distressed but beloved tech products. They bought Evernote, they bought Meetup, and they optimize them.
Optimize sounds like a euphemism for fire everyone and cut all the costs.
It often is. They have this proprietary tech platform where they migrate the code, automate the backend, lay off most of the staff, and focus on extracting profit from the remaining loyal, paying users. They're kind of like a recycling plant for old apps.
And they paid $1.5 billion for AOL, which implies they think there was still a lot of profit to be squeezed out of this stone.
And there is. The source material notes that as of 2025, AOL still has 30 million active users.
30 million? Who are these people? Are they bots?
No, they're real people, mostly older. They are people who have had their @AOL.com email address for 30 years. It is their digital identity. It's on their business cards, their bank accounts, their doctor's forms. Switching your primary email address is a nightmare. So they just stay, they log in to check mail, they read the news on the homepage. They are a captive, monetizable audience.
But the dial-up, that is truly officially gone.
Yes, the source confirms it. On September 30, 2025, AOL officially discontinued the dial-up service for good.
It's just incredible to think that as recently as 2015, there were still 2.1 million people paying for AOL dial-up.
Inertia is the most powerful force in all of business. Some people just keep paying the bill because they forgot about it or they think they still need it for their email to work. But by 2021, it was down to just a few thousand, and now, zero. The screeches have finally gone silent.
So as we look back on this entire journey, from downloading Atari games over a phone line in 1983 to being acquired by an Italian optimization firm in 2026, what's the synthesis here? How should we remember AOL?
You know, it is so easy to mock AOL. It's easy to laugh at the "you've got mail" guy and the carpet bombing CDs. But I think we really need to give them their flowers. AOL taught an entire generation of people how to be online.
It was the training wheels for the internet.
It was more than that. It normalized the behaviors that we all do every single day without thinking. Think about it. Instant messaging AIM is the direct grandfather of WhatsApp, Slack, and Discord. The profile you had on AOL Hometown, that is the grandfather of your Facebook page. The curated newsfeed, AOL invented that.
And the freemium model, giving away the software for free to get you hooked on the monthly subscription.
Exactly. And for better or worse, the surveillance model, tracking what you do online to sell targeted ads. We often look at AOL as this big, clumsy dinosaur that couldn't adapt and died. But if you actually look at its DNA, it won. Its DNA is everywhere. We are all still living in the world Steve Case built. The graphics are just better now.
That is a haunting thought. We are all still in the walled garden. The walls are just invisible now.
And the garden is a lot bigger. We traded the blue AOL interface for the blue Facebook interface, but the fundamental game is exactly the same. Keep the user logged in, keep them clicking, and sell their attention to the highest bidder.
Well, on that cheerful note, we are going to wrap up this Valentine's deep dive. If you still have an @AOL.com email address, wear it like a badge of honor. You are a pioneer. You are a survivor.
And maybe, just maybe, check your credit card statement and see if you're still paying for it.
That is very good advice. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We will catch you on the next one.